for September 25th, 2025. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So we will have a little bit of an introduction here and some background just for a reminder. Next slide. So we have closed captions in English and Spanish. English closed captions are available within the Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link on the slide here to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. And so how to access closed captions? At the bottom of the middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. You can see that circle there. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen. Click on the CC icon and a separate window with captions will appear. So we're going to give a few tips for webinar participation. We're really glad you're joining us here on the webinar and also on YouTube. And we encourage panelists to turn your videos on. It would be great for the public to see you. Keep your audio on mute when not speaking. And before speaking, please state your name and affiliation to help attendees identify who is talking. If you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-931-5839. And to introduce myself, to keep as far as the tips, my name is Anita Kailani Yap, and I am the ESG facilitator for today. We will have an opportunity for public input to ESG. Now, there's an opportunity to provide brief public input at the meeting today. And then if you'd like to submit input after the meeting, you can email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with ESG Public Comment in the subject line. You may also call this number, 888-503-6735, and state ESG Public Comment in your message. And then you can leave a message. So we have a few meeting ground rules. So this is just a reminder, honor the agenda, listen to understand and ask questions to clarify. Be hard on the problem and soft on people. Address interests and seek common ground, and provide a balance of speaking time. So today at our meeting agenda, I'll do just a brief review. We have welcome and introductions. We always open, as we do with the introductions, each ESG member will introduce themselves and give a brief update from their perspective on their agencies. Next, we'll have program updates on funding and upcoming work, recent engagement, efforts to advance delivery, public comment, next steps, and closing. So with that, before we have Greg do program updates, we're going to do a round of introductions and also updates as well. So it looks like Ed isn't here yet, so we'll wait on the community advisory updates to the end. So we'll start with our local government elected officials. So I'd like to invite Mayor Ann from the City of Vancouver.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to a beautiful September fall day. We're happy to be here and enjoy the opportunity to learn more about how our project's coming along.
Thank you, Mayor Ann. Next, we'll have City Councilor of Portland, Olivia Clark, and it looks like we have Megan standing in for her.
Hi, everyone. I am Councillor Clark's Chief of Staff, Megan Byer. She will be here, but she was coming from a police ceremony this morning, so she's running a little late, but she will be joining you. So I'll be here until she gets in.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. If she shows up during the introductions, I'll make sure to give her an opportunity. Next, we will have Oregon Metro Council President Lynn Peterson.
Morning, everyone. Lynn Peterson, Metro Council President.
Lynn, you have any updates you'd like to share?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will have Southwest Regional Transportation Council, Matt Ransom.
Yeah, good morning. Matt Ransom, Director here at RTC. And I'm pleased to be here with all partners. Look forward to the update. On behalf of RTC, no updates. We just try to get the money out and our partner agency's happy. So hopefully that's occurring. But great to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Our Washington State Department of Transportation, is Julie Meredith here?
Julie, Secretary Meredith is not. I am Ron Pate. I'm Assistant Secretary for Mega Programs and Urban Mobility. It's good to be with you all today.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Have any updates you'd like to share?
There are no updates I'd like to share at this time. but
All
thank you
right.
for
Thank
asking.
you, Ron. Next, we have Oregon Department of Transportation, Chris Strickler.
Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to see everybody here today. Look forward to the conversation. And my only update is fingers crossed for a special session conclusion next week.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
So TriMet is Sam Dessou here, or representative. Oh, there you are, Sam. Please go.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to be here this morning. I just want to say that it was great going back to Washington, D.C. with JPAC and all the members most of the members that are here to advocate for our CIG programs and all of our projects that's going on. So it was great. I think we were able to make our point to our congressional delegations. It's good to see you all this morning, and I agree with Director Strickler. We are all hopeful for next week's vote for the transportation package.
Thank you, Sam. Next is CTRAN, Leanne Carver. Okay, moving on, Port of Portland, Dan Eisenbeis.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Eisenbeis. I'm the Regional Affairs Manager at the Port of Portland, serving as Curtis Robinhold's alternate this morning. One update to share. Earlier this month, the Port Commission approved a lease for Harbor International to take over as the operator of the container terminal at Terminal 6. We're very excited about that.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Next, Port of Vancouver, Juliana Marler.
Good morning, everyone. Juliana Marler, CEO with the Port of Vancouver. I think for an update, just wanted to share that we are heading into the next phase of our Terminal 1 dock improvements. As we go into the in-water work window, you will start to see the dock start to get built out and take shape. So pretty exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana. Good to see you all. Thank you all for coming. And last but not least, Lynn Ballantyre, our co-chair of the Community Advisory Committee.
Thank you. And thank you all for being so brief, because I do have a little bit of information I would like to share. The community, as you're likely aware, the Community Advisory Group and the Equity Advisory Groups have been meeting jointly this year. And this has been really helpful in terms of robust discussions, different perspectives, resource sharing. So because it's one meeting instead of two separate, it's really leveraged our resources in an efficient manner without losing any of the benefits. We've met 4 times this year. In April, we heard from the Oregon and Washington Departments of Health and provided input. In June, we met to discuss the CBAG final recommendations, workforce outreach, and information to prepare for the summer architectural design elements workshops. We met virtually in July and in person in August with the design team. And I'm just going to say that was a huge win with all of our attendees. People were so excited about getting to actually visualize and see and understand more what the architectural elements, how they could impact the project in meaningful ways. Some of the key feedback, which I know you've all asked always, what we're hearing, what's the feedback? It includes the significance of accessible transitions from the shared use path and other spaces. Quite a bit of interest and concern and advocacy for considering elevator connections because of the extensive spiral ramp that's needed for motorized traffic, aligning pathways with transit levels to create smoother transfers, interest in building walls that feel welcoming, and include representation of local history, natural elements, and indigenous perspectives. And then there was also a request for clarification on how advisory group member feedback will be used to determine program design priorities. And I'm not going to address the excitement around the architectural elements because Casey will be sharing additional details with that subsequently. That concludes my share out. Thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Lynn. It's always good to hear community feedback as we move through this process. So thank you for your service and participation. So next, we're going to move on to program updates. I'm going to introduce Greg Johnson.
Anita, it looks like Leanne was able to join us.
Oh, okay. Leanne, welcome.
Hi, morning. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties, but Leanne Caver, CTRAN. It's been a while. Update for CTRAN as we had our groundbreaking for Highway 99 back in July, and we're just trucking along with that project and looking forward to getting that going.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. Glad you could join us. All right. And then now we'll move on to Greg. Greg Johnson, IBR Program Administrator with Program Updates.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. Once again, it's been a lot of activities that have occurred since we last met. So for the record, my name is Greg Johnson. I'm the Program Administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, a shared resource between the Oregon Department of Transportation and Washington State Department of Transportation. So let's go to the next slide, please. So you've seen this slide ad nauseum. So this is our program schedule slide. But the good news on this slide is that we are tending towards the end of the environmental process. And that will be a major, major milestone in getting this program underway. So we are currently working with our federal partners to get to the final supplemental environmental impact statement. As you recall, last fall, we put out the draft supplemental. We received nearly 10,000 comments. So the team has been working with the partners to address each of those. Those answers to those comments will be found in that final supplemental document. So the team is working very closely with our federal partners. We are on the verge of going into the legal sufficiency review for that document, and with the grand hope of reaching the final supplemental document early in 2026, and soon thereafter in spring of 2026, getting to the record of decision. And as many of you know, that record of decision will then allow us to start moving into construction. So we have projects that we are looking at. The first major project will be getting a contractor, a progressive design build contractor team on board to start the big bridge and start hopefully putting equipment in the water sometime in late 2027, early 2028. That's our current schedule, and we are working very diligently to keep that. But you can see the other items that are still going on. We are working on permits. Sometime early this fall, we hope to have a permit or a navigational impact report submitted to the Coast Guard, and that will start the process of determining the bridge configuration that we're building, whether this will be a fixed span or a movable span that the Coast Guard will permit. We continue on design. We're getting to 30% on a number of elements for the program, so that design will continue. We know that we're going to be having design build contractors, either progressive design build contractors on the most complicated parts. So our team is taking this design to approximately 30% across the board. So the pre-construction activities involve starting to look at procurement processes and documents to start getting those documents ready to put on the street and get comments back from the industry. We also are looking at starting construction next year on a number of smaller items to get this roadway prepared for the big work that has to happen. You're going to hear more on our grant applications for CIG through Federal Transit Administration, but needless to say, we are right now we have $2.1 billion awarded to us in both the MEGA combined with the BIP, as well as we have a $30 million Connecting Communities grant that WSDOT and the city of Vancouver applied for. Our tribal consultation is still very strong. We're going to talk a little bit about the 106 and the PA process to get tribal support and input on how the program moves forward. And our community engagement is still being very robust. We did not want to go quiet, even though we are doing a lot of internal work. We are still out in the community, making presentations and showing up at community events so folks can ask questions and inquire of the program. We continue to have office hours that we offer to anyone who wants to come and talk to us. So that is one of the features. So we make those office hours either in person or virtual. But once again, this is the good news slide that we are tending towards the end of that green box that will then get us into that orange box of construction. So next slide, please. So some of the other environmental milestones that we have achieved over the last number of months are Section 106, which deals with historical properties. We had an online open house, and once again, we're working on a draft programmatic agreement to how we will deal with these impacted properties that are covered under Section 106. We also received a biological impact from NOAA Fisheries. So that was a major step and demonstrates our compliance with the Endangered Species Act, and will also speak to how we can have a presence in the river at what times of the year. So that's a very big step in determining how this bridge itself will be built. So once again, sometime this fall, we are anticipating submitting the navigational impact report to the United States Coast Guard, and that will start the process of them reaching agreement on what type of bridge they will permit us to build, whether it will be our preferred fixed span or whether we will be going towards a movable span at this location to duplicate the type of bridge that currently exists. So late this year, we're hoping to complete the work on the programmatic agreement. We have numerous tribes that are giving us input on that document. So that is very critical to a number of things that we will be doing. The final supplemental environmental impact statement. Once again, we're hoping to wrap that document up early in 2026. We have joint lead agencies, ODOT, WSDOT, Metro, RTC, TriMet, and CTRAN, as well as the cooperating agencies, the two cities and the two ports that will be reviewing this final supplemental document. We also, on the heels of that, we are hoping to have this amended record of decision. And that is the final step in the supplemental environmental impact statement process, and that gives us the approval from our federal partners to begin construction and start drawing down on the dollars that have been awarded to us through those federal grants. So let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, we are carrying both a fixed and movable span configuration with us in the NEPA process as we continue to have conversations with the Coast Guard. We have been negotiating with river users to ensure that we have mitigated needs for anything more than 116-foot fixed span. So this will follow with a 30-day comment period from the Coast Guard. And we're encouraging all maritime users and anyone with an interest to make sure they make their voice heard during this process. So we think we have reached the final agreement with impacted river users. So we've been coordinating with governor's offices on each side of the river, and that timing for the submittal of the navigational impact report is once again going to happen within the next month to 2 months. And once again, that decision on final bridge configuration from the Coast Guard is expected in early 2026. If a movable span is selected, it is expected to impact factors such as the construction timeline as well as the estimated cost. So those are some of the key things that have been happening on that front. And let's go to the next slide, which I think transitions us. So Anita, at this time, I would take any questions that this group may have.
Yes, if any folks on the ESG have questions, I would say it's a small enough group, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Greg any questions before we move on. All right, seeing none. Thank you, Greg. So we're going to move on to funding and upcoming work. So we've got Frank Green and Ray Mabey, which are assistant program administrators, and also Steve Witter, who is a deputy assistant program administrator. So we are going to start with Ray at the beginning of this presentation. Take it away, Ray.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Mabey, Assistant Program Administrator. I'll start off talking about our funding and our grants, and then turn over for Frank to talk about upcoming estimates. So next slide, please. Great. So I think this slide we've all seen. Just a reminder, our cost estimate that we conducted and the finance plan that came with it was contrary to what most people say, is fairly recent, 2023. And the estimate range between $5 and $7.5 billion. Now we do know that we've continued to see some unprecedented escalation in cost pressures on projects, especially projects of the size and complexity. And that's why we are working towards a new estimate and finance plan to be released this December. Frank will pick it up from there. But this slide also shows the funds that we have lined up for this program, which are substantial. Both states bringing to the table $1 billion each. You know, we've secured the two federal grants, USDOT and USD Mega Grant and FHWA Bridge Investment Program Grant. We were able to execute both of those agreements and obligate some funds out of each as that was done. Looking to create and work on amendments as we reach the conclusion of our NEPA phase to obligate more of those and meet the various grant requirements for each. Continuing to pursue the FTA New Starts Capital Investment Grant, which is a stepped process that many of you are very familiar with. So that's work underway. And the two commissions are working towards our toll rates and policies for the program, with a level 3 couple investment grant, or excuse me, level 3 investment grade analysis being conducted as we speak, and they will come back together and help set the next rates and help inform our funding from tolling. We're targeting $1.25 billion about right now, but we believe there's elasticity as shown in that funding range on the slide. And then lastly, we've got a USDOT Reconnecting Communities pilot grant for the Community Connector in Vancouver. That was a joint application by Washington DOT and the City of Vancouver. We have yet to draft our agreement for that grant, but that work is underway. So we've got quite a bit of funding for a project size complexity at the time that we are actually in, comparatively to other projects. But the next question that we'll find out as we move through the next estimate is, how does that compare to an updated estimate? That work is ahead of us. Next slide, please. So this is an update slide on where we are with those various grants, going into a little more detail what I mentioned earlier, starting with the mega grant, what we've obligated and that we have a grant agreement executed. Similarly for the BIP grant, and then the other 2 grants that are underway and getting executed and secured. Pretty quick on those. So next, I think I'll hand it off to Frank to talk about the estimate process.
Thank you, Ray. If you can go to the next slide, please. So as kind of Greg and Ray mentioned, we are, as we approach the final supplemental EIS, we are getting to 30% design for, some of the substantial elements of the program, the bridge, the approaches, a lot of the transit elements, the interchanges on Washington and Oregon side. And that will allow us to go through the process of updating our cost estimate. So just a reminder that we do a risk-based cost estimating process. It is formally called the cost estimate validation process in the WashDOT process is what we were following. And I know ODOT has adopted a very similar process. But what we do is we take those advanced designs to generate base cost estimates that will reflect the quantities, the materials, the type of design that we have. We will then also identify a range of risks that the program may encounter, whether those are schedule risks or cost risks, due to some of the potentially known elements like the geotechnical conditions, or even unknown elements that programs of this size and type of construction usually encounter, to try to quantify how much risk may be included. And then the third piece is we have a project schedule that we will kind of project those costs onto to identify inflation and ultimately get what is a risk-based year of expenditure cost estimate. So the schedule that we are currently looking at, looks to get in the water as soon as possible, and does show that for construction of this size of a program, it's as we've said before, likely more than 10 years of construction for some of those significant elements of the program, with the way we have to sequence them. So that updated cost estimate will then also go kind of be compared to a finance plan with the information that Ray had just kind of gone over to show how the funding for a program and the construction and sequencing of a program like this can work. Next slide, please. So what are we estimating? I think Greg had kind of mentioned this and alluded to this a little bit before. But we will be getting these cost estimates risk adjusted and put onto a year of expenditure estimate. We have over 100 risk factors. As I had mentioned, there anything from geotechnical conditions to potential schedule impacts from completing some of these environmental documents, things like that. But we run those through a risk model, and what we're looking to estimate is actually both an estimate for a fixed span bridge and a movable span bridge, so that we can understand with both of those kind of bridge configurations being included in the NEPA document, what the potential cost difference is between them. So with that, I think I'd like to advance to the next slide and invite Steve Witter in. He's going to talk a little bit through the capital investment grant process for us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Witter. I'm a Deputy Assistant Program Administrator on the Interstate Bridge Program. We truly have a multimodal transit program with the Interstate Bridge Replacement. It includes light rail service as well as express bus service. And for the light rail side of the program, we're seeking a capital investment grant, which is the largest discretionary program inside the Department of Transportation, and it's administered by the Federal Transit Administration. We're seeking approximately $1 billion in CIG funding to match with our local funds that we have here. The process has significant oversight of the cost, risk, and financial management of the transit program, and that's administered through 4 different sort of steps that you go through. And FTA is involved with us approving each one of those steps as we move through them. The project part of the process is we'll submit rating materials, and those are very specific to FTA's rating criteria. And the projects must rate successfully, which is a medium or better. The scale is low, medium, medium, high, and high. And so you have to hit that medium to keep moving forward. That really enables the project to be put into the planning for congressional funding. And when we submit those materials, they go into an annual report that FTA issues to Congress, which eventually informs the president's budget as they go through the federal budgeting cycle. Next slide, please. The CIG rating criteria, again, I mentioned a rating of at least medium across these different areas. It's broken into 2 major categories, and you have to receive, essentially medium on most of the component parts. There's project justification, which includes all the things that the transit program will result in, which are mobility improvements, congestion relief, the environmental benefits. It has to meet a cost effectiveness criteria, balancing cost and benefits. There's also financial commitment, which really speaks to the local side of the funding equation, and that the local financial commitment is solid, and that's both for capital and operating funds. And they look into sort of the financial readiness of the agencies to operate this over the long haul, which is a 20-year kind of financial assessment. If we could go to the next slide. I mentioned the project justification and mobility improvements. They really rate on ridership, and there are a number of ways you can express your ridership with FTA, but they always have their FTA model that they run, which is called the Simplified Trips on Projects, a STOPS model. And this is intended to provide sort of an across-the-board comparison across the nation, because each sort of local jurisdiction has its own transit and mobility policies. This tries to level the playing field across the nation so they can compare project to project to project. It's a nationally calibrated model, and it uses the same criteria across the board. Sometimes it yields a more conservative approach to ridership than the local models do, and that's because it doesn't recognize some of those locally specific ways that jurisdictions encourage transit use. I think we could go to the next slide, please. The STOPS model uses current year forecasts, so it takes a snapshot as if you were going to kind of sort of this transit project came down from the sky and just landed in your local jurisdiction today. It would model what that ridership would be today. You can also use the STOPS model to model ridership in the future, but that's not how projects are rated. I mentioned its current year, so we're looking at post-pandemic ridership as the basis for these project forecasts. This ridership model, as I mentioned, it feeds back into project justification criteria and also informs the operating costs. The project will right-size the level of service given the ridership, and that's what informs O&M. We're going to continue to update these models. We submit for ratings 2 more times during the project. And so each year, those ratings will get updated and presumably will incorporate the latest data year by year as we move forward through the process. I think we could go to the next slide, please. I mentioned transit O&M. That's a big topic here in our community right now. The transit O&M equations include, again, sort of the light rail and the express bus. As one imagine, it includes all of the things that go into making the daily operations happen. So labor cost for operators, utilities and fuel, vehicle maintenance, facilities maintenance, and then all the support staff that clean the vehicles and provide safety and security, customer service, all those things get wrapped into O&M. We're working on our estimates, and we'll continue to update those actually each year as well, and we'll go back and inform those future submittals to the FTA. And I think with that, that's the body of my presentation, and Anita, I can give it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Steve, Frank, and Ray. Before we move on, are there any questions for Ray about funding and federal grants, with Frank for cost estimate updates, and Steve for the capital investment process? Dan.
Thank you for the presentation. Just thinking ahead to the release of the updated cost estimates and funding plan, what engagement should the ESG expect in terms of development of an updated funding plan?
So
go ahead, Greg.
It is our intent to, as we get closer to that December date, to make sure that all of the ESG partners are up to speed on the process and our preliminary findings. So as we get closer to that December release, that's the conversation we'll have. And Frank, you can jump in and add other topics.
No, I think you covered, Greg. We're working on a rollout plan that will include ESG partners as well as PMG at our PMG meetings to walk through that rollout. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Dan, for that question. Matt.
Yeah, thank you. And this question is more, I think, directed to Steve. And thank you for the presentation of that high-level material, how the project will have to prepare certain tools and metrics and data to submit to FTA. And so let me just state this, because I think it's an issue of public interest. And I'll state this, and maybe if you could confirm whether my understanding is correct. So RTC and Metro jointly produce a regional travel model, and that's a forecast well into the future. It's a tool that we use routinely to estimate needs for the regional system. It's multimodal in nature, et cetera, routinely recalibrated and so forth. What I hear you saying in the STOPS model is FTA has created their distinctly unique to themselves a tool, we'll call it a model, that is scaled nationally so that Portland, Vancouver, Seattle, Nashville, Florida, wherever, that all applicants to the CIG program need to submit data within their format, within their method, within their model, so that there's an equivalency and that FTA staff can assess the data accordingly. And as a result of that, that model is different and separate from the travel forecast model, which is used for the basis of the EIS forecasts. They're separate, they're distinctly separate, and by assumption, the data and the outputs will be distinctly different. And as a manager of one piece of the model, as I described, I'm okay with that. Do I understand that correctly? Is that the proper characterization, that the project will have two different data sets, maybe others, to the extent Federal Highway or whomever else might have a different metric for application? If you could just confirm that that's the correct understanding, I think that's important.
Matt, I think you're fundamentally correct that there are two different models, and they yield two different results looking at two different scenarios. You mentioned the STOPS model in Orlando and Nashville and Vancouver, Washington, and South Dakota. What it does is it seeks to strip out those local specific transit and transportation demand tools that are not consistent between Nashville and Vancouver and San Francisco. And the regional model that RTC and Metro have developed looking into the future has certain transit demand management tools that may or may not be in place today. And so when I say they sort of strip out those tools and look at sort of the on-the-ground situation, that's why you have two sets of numbers. One is current year, one is a forecast year or future year that we see in the regional model. So I hope that confirmed your understanding and provided a little bit more detail why the two different models.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just follow up to say, as a manager of a piece of a model that's being used within the framework of this program's EIS studies, I'm okay with that. And I understand the purpose of that. The purpose is, you've then validated, FTA has created a tool for their specific purpose and is demanded or required applicants into their program use that tool or that model, whatever the term should be, and that's defined as the STOPS tool. And that when the data produced in the STOPS model is presented and debuted, etc., it may and inherently is going to be different than what we see in the EIS forecast. I'm okay with that because I understand the purpose and the intention, and have full confidence, certainly, in the model that is developed jointly by RTC and Metro. It's a highly regarded tool. It's routinely revalidated and re-estimated. The math behind it is updated quite routinely. And I understand the parallel nature of the two. And I think it's important, as we and others sort of hear the questions as they come forward, why are they different? They're fundamentally different by their very nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you helping us kind of understand that.
Thanks for that question, Matt. Any other questions? And I'd also like to welcome Portland City Councilor Olivia Clark. Thanks for joining us.
Apologize for being late.
Olivia, well, we have you here. Do you have any updates you'd like to share with the ESG?
Not really. I've appreciated getting all the materials, and I did catch some of the transit overview. I really appreciate that. We just recently did a tour, thanks to Greg and others. It was excellent. We brought several city councilors and their staff on a bus tour of the project, and it was very helpful. We were greeted by Mayor Ann, which was terrific. But I think everybody on the tour learned a lot. It was a good use of our time.
Great, thank you, Councilor Clark. So next we're going to move on to recent engagement. Greg's going to talk a little bit about 2025 engagement, and we got Casey Lyles that'll talk about Architectural Elements Workshop.
All right, well, thank you, Anita. Let's go to the next slide, please. And one more. So, as I stated earlier, the team continues to outreach into the community, to hear voices, regarding what we are planning for the Interstate Bridge Corridor. So we have participated in over 100 engagement and outreach activities thus far this year, and plan to continue those type of engagements throughout the life of this program. It is extremely important that the community voice is heard and reflected in how this program moves forward. So once again, we've had 12 IBR events and advisory group meetings. Lynn Valenter spoke to the combining of the community advisory group with the equity advisory group, and we have created some great conversations around those things. We recently wrapped up a conversation with the bi-state legislative oversight team with 16 representatives representing both sides of the river. So that was a very good conversation. We have a number of questions that came up that we either answered in the program or will answer here shortly in response to those questions that came up. We have been participating in workforce training and resource events. We know that this program is going to require a number of folks coming into this industry to provide labor and expertise to make this happen in the future. So we are continuing to work with our workforce entities on both sides of the river to understand and prepare for that eventuality. Tabling at community events, we are at fairs and festivals, anywhere where folks want or need us to be. Our team will show up to talk to folks about this program. We have conferences and summits. We have one coming up in Seattle with Engineering News Record, which will be a national conversation on large construction projects, which IBR will be represented at that conference with a speaking role. We've had almost 18,000 web visitors through the second quarter of this year. And our website is an award-winning website, has tremendous amount of information. We keep it updated to make sure that folks can navigate it clearly and get there as we move forward. One of the other, and I wouldn't put it as an engagement activity, but also a milestone that was achieved, and we are in the process on the Oregon side, is reaching STIP amendments to allow us to start moving this program from the planning phase to the actual construction phase. So we have gone through processes at both RTC and Metro, and we received a great amount of support at both entities. We still have, on the Oregon side, we still have to go through the Oregon Transportation Commission as well as the Federal Highway Administration in Oregon to get the final approvals for the STIP amendment. So a lot of good hard work is being done to prepare us to move into construction. So let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, the advisory group meetings have been going well, strongly attended with great conversations. About 3 weeks ago, we held a construction industry webinar where we invited the construction and consulting industry to come and talk to us and hear where we are at on this program. So as they are forming teams to provide services, construction, as well as design services for this program to answer their questions. So very well attended. I think we had over 300 attendees. Once again, I talked about, or it was mentioned earlier by Sam Dessou, the JPAC trip to DC, which I attended along with JPAC to give updates on where IBR is at and the needs of the program as we move forward. Talked about the Bi-State Legislative Committee, and Councilor Clark spoke elegantly about the Portland City Council Program Area Tour, which we enjoyed having that conversation. And we invite any of the partners or others who want to have tours of the program area, please contact us. This is one of the best ways to understand the challenges and some of the narrow windows that we have to fit this program in. So very, very good conversations, good questions that came out of that tour with Portland City Council members. So we are also doing presentations all over the community: Longview, Early Edition Rotary, El Grito in Portland, NAYA in both in the Portland side with Native American youth. And we also presented at the Western Bridge Engineer Seminar, as well as the Mid-American State DOT. So folks have a national interest in what this program is doing and some of the ground that we're breaking with this program. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and fellow team member, Casey Lyles, to walk us through architectural elements. So Casey.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. I'm the IBR delivery manager, and I want to also thank Lynn Ballantyre for the intro as well. And Lynn, you provided a great summary of the work that we did with our joint advisory groups. I also want to extend a great deal of appreciation from the program and how much care in the work that you're doing within the program. So I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of folks involved that your work is greatly appreciated, and for the community is really visible. So I'm providing a summary of the recent architectural workshops. We've worked in July and August with the tribes and consulting parties, youth partners, and our advisory groups, as noted. We're working in that process for developing our vision and guidelines for architectural and aesthetics program-wide. We will be using that feedback to inform the guidelines as we develop our design and construction procurement documents as we move forward. The process that we worked on was not developing or selecting a bridge type or configuration. Again, this is program-wide architecture and aesthetics, and it wasn't starting from scratch. As many of you are involved in, we did quite a bit of work during the previous stint and used some of that work to start with from the Columbia River Crossing project. Next slide, please. The things that we worked on within the program, the work with our groups, expressing the different topics that we're working within the program, working on the walls, aesthetics around design and ecology, shared use pathways. The examples that we have in front of us, and I have a few of the slides from our presentations, they all show a single level fixed bridge configuration for efficiency in this. But also, as we prepared the details around the guidelines and got feedback, our intention was to get that in a way that provided informed values that then can be applied regardless of the bridge configuration that's then selected through the NEPA process. Next slide, please. So good design really involves really a people first approach. The graphic here is really meant to depict that there's different viewpoints. There's different speeds of the users within the program area. We have multiple modes that have to come together and coordinate, and we want to use all of these to inform the design as we move forward. Again, this people first approach is the starting point. Next slide, please. And in part of that good design is really a typical three-part process. And first identifying the why and the who, and in the middle section here, how would we accomplish the work to address those needs? And of course, the last part of that is applying it to what are the physical elements that accomplish that work. Next slide. Along the way, we've heard through the architecture and aesthetics from the external groups specific to architecture and aesthetics, feedback on what they envision for the corridor. Again, whether it's landside work, work on the bridge, etc. These are the things that we've heard bubble up through, and those things that really the vision of folks that want to see the product that comes out of the program. Next slide. We have a few visualizations that apply some of the feedback and give examples through the corridor. We have a few specifically from pedestrian viewpoint areas that as you work through your way through the corridor, if you're walking, this is an example of standing in Oregon on Hayden Island at an elevated shared use path as it starts somewhere midway of going from the land side of Hayden Island up to the bridge level, looking across into Washington on the north side there. So representing, again, kind of a single level bridge, but looking at the elements of how you might see the walls or parapets, you might see the structure off in the distance, and really giving a human perspective of what it might look like. Next slide, please. Another perspective we provided was to look at how that human perspective might be underneath a bridge as a roadway crosses, for example, local roadway on Hayden Island underneath those bridge structures that for the freeway and transit that go overhead, how we might treat the light underneath those structures and make it more enticing for folks to walk, bike, and roll, and get to their destinations, including getting to the other modes, transit, as well as providing, of course, the circulation for vehicle traffic and that coordination. Next slide. And of course, we really need to consider what the architecture and aesthetics are day and night through the program area. A lot of that is lighting through the area, but we want to make sure that safety and security is first and foremost through that program area. This is an example of maybe a nighttime look at a bridge aesthetics with lighting. Next slide. Moving across into Washington, again, a perspective of maybe midway coming down off of the bridge into landings in Vancouver waterfront with a shared use path. So this is on the Washington shoreline coming off the shared use path, going underneath the transit bridge and also under the freeway area to get to touchdown. So a little bit more perspective. Next slide, please. Won't dwell on these too much. But the Knight Architects and ZGF are two architectural groups preparing the details in these and sharing that information along the way for the feedback. Another perspective on the Washington shoreline, this would be on Columbia Way, looking westerly towards the bridge, and again how the bridge, in order to get across the river, is up there with the shared use path coming off, in keeping with our standards to make sure that there's walkable, bikeable grades, rollable grades with shared use path to get down to ground, and how that might look to the users on those facilities and in and around the community. Next slide. Oh, actually, I think that's this is the last slide, I think, for the series. But again, just one more perspective of what that area might be representative of. Of course, we've got a lot of work in front of us towards the design of the areas. And as the program progresses, we have multiple projects that address the different areas of the program. So as Greg mentioned before, I think starting with kind of the river bridge doesn't itself have the landings in Oregon and Washington. But as you get to the approaches project, then we continue to use guidelines that will then require those contractors to fall within the guidelines and develop their designs following those, meeting those. With that, I think that's the last slide summary of the architectural elements.
Great. Thank you, Casey and Greg. It's exciting to see these in perspective. So does anyone have questions for either Casey or Greg about recent engagements in the architectural elements? Olivia, Councillor Clark.
I just have a quick question on the required grade of the walkway. Is that does that come from Americans with Disabilities Act, or what is the actual grade of the walkway?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. Great question. Yes, all of the grades within the program would absolutely meet the American with Disabilities Act. It's not our desire to maximize grades. It's really our desire to make those grades throughout the program area as approachable as possible. Obviously, there's some areas that if you try to lower the grades, it might mean you might take something longer to touch down, for instance, coming off the bridge. Longer to touch down might mean a trade-off of impacts then that's in a competition of how much space do we have to build things. There's a significant trade-off of that, of trying to keep grades at a minimum and also keep impacts to a minimum.
Can you just share the percent? Great.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what areas we're really talking about, but in general, the ADA requires no more than 5% for pedestrians. We design throughout the program area to 4.5% or less, and again, trying to stay lower. The goal of 4.5 is that when you go build it, sometimes pouring concrete isn't necessarily piano work. It might be 4.6, but we don't want to be at 5 and go to 5.1, and those really introduce problems for the agencies. So again, we try to design at 4.5% or lower and try to keep that as low as possible for grades.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next we have Metro Councilor Lynn Peterson and then Matt Ransom next up.
Thank you. Thanks for the visuals and all the work that's gone into it. I have two questions, and one is on the pedestrian access, especially to the stations and all the work that's gone into it. Has there been any, I know you've looked at a lot of different ways to do this, but is there any way to shorten the distance the pedestrians are going, making it less of a trek? That's the first question. And then what were the problems that you ran into when you tried to look at that? And obviously grade might be one of them, but I'd like to understand more about that because it is becoming, anytime we lengthen the time that somebody has to traverse and make a transfer or try to go up a grade, right? It makes it harder. That's the first question. The second question, I'm not sure we really touched on it with the designs, not bridge type, but the actual designs. I'm sorry if I missed that, but I just wanted to know what the kind of what the criteria were coming into proposing the different types of design architectural elements.
Thanks, President Peterson. So I'm not quite following your second one, but I will first address your first question about lengthening or shortening, excuse me. We've heard quite a bit about the desire to make sure that there's the desirable and the most efficient way. And we know that from a people first perspective, those that are walking, biking, rolling have the largest impact for distance or grades. Those, as opposed to vehicles or transit. Clearly, the walking, biking, rolling is critical in that. It's also known that as we get across the river, we are at a higher elevation than today. So inherently, those are working against each other. But for the things that we've looked at within the program, such as looking for the opportunity to maybe combine vertical circulation between things that might already be there. So if we're planning a transit station on the Vancouver side, for instance, in the waterfront, and it has elevators, then we're trying to look at, can we maximize that vertical possibility with a shared use path and the potential combination of the connection there that then say, yes, you can walk, bike, roll through a ramp system that again is at acceptable grades, but maybe you don't want to go as far and you can get down through an elevator or up through an elevator. It's not always possible to do that, and it might take additional consideration, quite a bit of, in some areas it may work, in some areas it may not for that. So we have been looking at that throughout the program area. Again, there's some the trade-offs in that for whether you can lengthen versus grades. Did that get to what you're getting at? Somewhat.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I guess, you know, kind of worst case scenario, if we end up with a lift span, I guess my question is also, does the bridge have to go as high then? And is there a way to start thinking about how to do the pedestrian differently? So just thinking ahead to worst case, does that help shorten pedestrian distances then?
So in short, the lift span, we looked at a profile that is able to be, for one, the lift span has to be on a flat surface. So changing the profile, that requires us to put a flat surface across the lift. That does change the profile of the bridge, but in our initial evaluation of that, we don't think it would be less than between 90 and 100 foot of clearance. So you might drop the profile as much as 16 feet or so. In Vancouver, we still have the roadway that has to get over BNSF. So what that results in is you still have this requirement at a high level, and when you get to the Vancouver shoreline, you still have what I would say is still a distance to get down off the bridge. It's not so much less that you have a completely different touchdown. It doesn't offer something less for a completely different touchdown. Instead of going around 3 spirals in a ramp, it might be 2.5 spirals. That I hope I can get to that. In Oregon, that's a little bit less. Mostly that we have the distance from the lift down to Oregon is slightly less or more. So there's that opportunity, and it's not as constrained from the getting over the Vancouver BNSF, but it is constrained when we have the roadways that are on Hayden Island. So we still have to get over those and be at such a level that is able to, again, stay with the freeway going over and then the touchdowns onto Hayden Island. As far as your second question, the actual designs, and I mean, I think as far as the starting goes, starting work with, of course, the purpose and need from the program, and in really identifying vision from the program work in front of us. And I'm not sure if I follow everything in your question there.
So yeah, I
restate it.
I don't want to get into the specifics of the actual architectural elements, but I'd like to know what they were inspired by. Were they inspired by? Did you ask the architects to say, make this inspired by the Pacific Northwest, make it reflect the values and architecture of downtown Vancouver, or the bridges in the surrounding major, metropolitan area that we are, taking inspiration from the context of the place, because I'm not getting any of that from those concepts.
Well, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think from a starting perspective is saying bring their experience in developing architectural guidelines, and of course from the Northwest, asking them, and not only them, but to through this process get that feedback from tribes, 106 consulting parties, and that is the thing that we're asking to get the feedback from the community on that. So. I appreciate the perspective on that. I think necessarily that it says were things applied initially from Pacific Northwest that weren't, whether it's the kind of the base design elements versus are there things that can be added on. I think they came from a standpoint of what are those base design elements, and can we start with those, and also be informed about what other things can, whether it's wall treatment or in the future, are there other opportunities for other community members to get involved as far as our aesthetics. So I know I didn't fully get to exactly the start, but I hope that helps. Part of this process was actually to get that feedback from the community.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking forward to more conversation on this and digging a little deeper into it and understanding, moving beyond just stamped concrete with heron or salmon on it, and understanding how it's going to relate to the Vancouver waterfront, what people will see, how it contributes to that space and placemaking. All of that seems really important. And I'm looking forward to that conversation.
And Casey, if I could, we also, besides Night Architecture, we had ZGF, a firm with very much local roots here, looking at design elements as well. And as Casey stated earlier, we took a lot of work that was done during CRC and incorporated those themes that were very much locally driven. So these aren't final concepts. We appreciate any input, and the team will take that and put that into the process to help keep these things moving forward. But yeah, we aren't done with this by a long shot. So
no, and I look forward to it, and delving in deeper with architects. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Peterson. Next up, we have Matt and then Lynn Ballantyre. Matt Ransom and then Lynn Ballantyre.
Well, first, I'd like to acknowledge Greg, you and the team for committing the resource and the scope, quite frankly, to this effort. And the reason why I think that's important is, Lynn Ballantyre, what you said in your report out, which is people are waiting to understand what this looks like, to envision how they're going to use it. Because the reality is we're going to be looking at this for 100+ years. We're going to be using it for 100+ years. And aside from the performance characteristics that I know we equally have to be really cognizant and designed to, the look and the feel is actually half of it, right? Because this is going to be a piece of infrastructure within our community. So thank you for the commitment of scope and time. I think it's well worth it. 2 requests, if I might, then about future scope. One is, when the bridge type decision is made, please accelerate within reason the design of the bridge. So personally speaking, I sort of like the V design of the rendering that you showed today of the main river bridge. It has an elegance, it has a simplicity. I sort of like the pier structure design. That's subjective to me, but I understand also that if it's not a static bridge or fixed bridge, if it's a movable span, that it might be different because of the structural requirements. And so architecturally, it might be different. So I think it would be incumbent upon the project team to accelerate that work so that then we can get to the place where we can start to understand what it looks like and make the reactions as President Peterson and others would, in terms of, we like the way it looks and so forth, within the reasons of it has to stand and it has to be seismically resilient, so on and so forth. And then the other request for scope, and I know you're going to do this, but I just need to say it here, continue to commit to the intensity of work within Vancouver waterfront design area and the Hayden Island design area. I think what's unique about this project compared to others is you're landing infrastructure of significant magnitude within active urban environments. It's even different than, bridges that I'm familiar with in Washington that have recently been built. Probably the west end of the 520 bridge, floating bridge, is probably the most active urban environment, not to diminish what's happening on the east side of Lake Washington, but we're talking downtown, we're talking Vancouver waterfront. We're also talking Hayden Island, which when you look at the magnitude of reconfiguration is of a scale that's pretty significant. That's probably an understatement. So I think it's money well spent to commit to that effort, even if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step to pause to reevaluate. That's worth it, because those urban environments are either going to be successful and propel and be beautiful to look at, or with the scale of infrastructure would be something that's displeasing to people. So within reason, accelerate that work, commit to the intensity of those 2 sub areas. I have confidence that you will, but again, I think just to say it publicly, that's really important.
Thank you, Matt. Next up, we have Lynn Valenter.
This isn't a question so much as a comment and maybe a little bit of a nod to Lynn Peterson's part 2 question. So we got to sit and listen to the architects for, I think, an hour twice. And so the elements that they consider, they were very careful to talk about, these are the opportunities, but they didn't have necessarily proposed solutions. They were just saying, for example, I'm going to use it non-technical, the pillars that hold up on-ramps, off-ramps, the bridge over land. They showed us, here's one look, and it was like a tree of concrete. And then here's an opportunity to do this, and it was just like a log, a square log. And then they showed some architectural elements, and then they showed architectural elements with lighting. And then they showed symmetrical and asymmetrical groupings of the pillars. And so it was just, I build capital projects a lot, and so I'm used to building grade choices, but the knowledge that they brought and the experience that they brought from bridge design across the globe really gave a lot of confidence that the aspirations that we're all sharing here can be realized. Of course, cost matters, and so being mindful of that also will matter. So as we looked at elements, there was not a price tag associated with them, rather it was more of a vision. So I came out of those sessions just I have no patience, so I was not looking forward to hour-long presentations, and I came out of there just absolutely fascinated. It was so extraordinary. So anyway, I just want to echo, I guess, Matt's comments also, that the investment in having the architects present and talk about choices and educate us a bit into what we were looking at, rather than just looking at it and going, yes, I like it, or no, I don't. But the nuances of how we got there was just truly extraordinary. So anyway, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Lynn, for that context as well. And so, Casey, do you have anything to wrap us up with this?
No, that's excellent. Thanks for stating that, Lynn. I really like that.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move on now to efforts to advance delivery with Greg Johnson and Casey Lyles.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Well, as you've heard, we are quickly transitioning from a environmental NEPA-based organization to an organization that's going to be focused on delivery. So in order to make that full transition, there's a number of things that we are doing to make sure we are ready and understand the challenges of delivering a complex program like this. So I'm going to have Casey walk you through some of the efforts that have been made to advance us into the delivery phase, which is coming sooner than later. So we will be hopefully next year having shovels in the ground. So with that, I'll turn it over to Casey.
Thanks, Greg. Next slide, please. One of the first bits of work that folks will see is part of our engineering work that advances the knowledge we have of what in-ground work means in trying to improve the ground conditions on Hayden Island as an example. That's where our work begins in the, again, preliminary engineering side of this. It'll look like construction. We have Keller North America that's starting the work, installing 3 different types of ground improvements on Hayden Island. If you're familiar with the area, they are installing it on the ODOT site there that was former licensing, or excuse me, permitting site. So we're doing that work. We're testing the ground conditions. We're testing the installation of actual ground improvements for the values that we get on how did the installation go, what is the characteristic and the work that's being done, and that'll inform our work moving forward to help give contractors and designers better information, hopefully leading to lower cost bids and more efficient construction in that. It'll take several months for us to get through that. So the community will actually see large cranes working out on Hayden Island to install those ground improvements. We did get a $1 million in BIP planning grant to do this work, as well as our existing funding. The contract is an ODOT led, administered project out of the IBR program. So next slide, please. So recently we also gave industry an update for IBR contracting. On September 8th, we presented our contracting plan, which includes design and construction opportunities, and the information involved in that throughout the program duration. That work is, I guess, meeting with the industry, and it's something that we're planning to do several times a year moving forward to keep industry updated on upcoming opportunities to work within the program, but also it gives that regular schedule for a community as well, and understanding how we're moving the program forward. We did establish a vendor portal where we have more than 3,000 vendors signed up to receive direct information from the program on this type of information, contracting, et cetera. And it's a great outlet for us to get the information out quickly to industry for their feedback. Next slide, please. Within the program, of course, it's the 5-mile program that we're talking about. We have a flux of the number of contracts that we'll have, but this list or this map shows all the different projects. I think you're mostly familiar with. We shared this initially last year, indicating how we would construct the program over time with the various different projects working in the 5-mile corridor. So we can't build it all at once. So we've updated this to represent our current thoughts around the schedule and the sequence of construction. Again, this map really is intended to give you the overall view, but also we have the link at the bottom that presents on our website both the map and all of the contract descriptions. Next slide, please. So the next 3 slides are a list of all the 28 projects or contracts, projects that we're proposing currently for the entire program. A few things of note on this table gives a little bit more summarization of the data for each of the projects. This is, again, the data that we shared. Some of it is the most readily available data. Please note, the cost estimate, for instance, from the 2023. That's something after we get through our entire risk estimating process this fall, we would update this list with our new cost estimate numbers. As we progress through our delivery planning, we will also update. We have an analysis for every project that will say whether it's going to be delivered, for instance, with progressive design build for the river bridge. We have placeholders for most of the other projects, but understand our snapshot of what contracting agency would be administering. And then we also added for this industry update the earliest anticipated construction advertisements. And in the case of those that require alternative bidding or the earliest RFQ. We have dates as early as 2026 in there. All of the dates on the first page were that list 2026 are noted to be after the record of decision. And again, those are the earliest. We also have several projects that are highlighted here in yellow, and those are some of the first projects out of the gate. There's 3 here and 1 on the next page, and we have a little more description on the first 2 following these slides. So next slide, please. That represents essentially all of the program projects through the area. And I'm looking for, I think the next slide might have, starting with the Columbia River Bridge project and a map just reflecting that first large project that's out of the gate, one of the first big ones, building the bridge, but doesn't have the touchdowns back to moving traffic onto it. That would be a follow-on approach project. But this bridge project replaces the 2 bridges, builds the 2 to the side of the existing bridge, northbound and southbound. Of course, the southbound bridge has the traffic as well as the light rail on the outside of the southbound structure, and then northbound structure for the active transportation users. It also of note for letting industry know, this is a bi-state contract. Work occurs in both states on this project. It is, next slide. It is a project that's intended to be administered by WashDOT. What's shown in that project is right now working towards a fixed span replacement bridge. However, as Greg noted, also in our NEPA, we have still the process to get through for determining whether it's fixed span or movable span within NEPA. And then if we do have a change to movable span from this work, then we would need to make sure and adjust our construction timeline and the cost appropriately. Next slide. So in summary, for the Columbia River Bridge project, it will be progressive design build administered by WashDOT's administration under the IBR program. We would anticipate the earliest right now for an RFQ, which would be after the ROD. However, if we get any possibility of approving the potential to get out to an RFQ ahead of the ROD, that's something we'll investigate. But again, we have a lot of work to do ahead of that, particularly that U.S. Coast Guard work. Other opportunities besides the construction, of course, we have the A&E side opportunities and other contracting, such as like an independent cost estimator or materials testing. Next slide. The other part we talk to industry about and making sure they understand just what all the different types of work that is involved in that project, for example. And so this helps give industry the idea what contractors might be sought within that the progressive design build contract. If you're someone that does pavement markings, for instance, there still is work to do within this project for pavement markings. So a list of examples that we provide industry. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the Approaches project. Wanted to make sure that folks are clear. This is overlapping project in the program duration. This is I like to think about it as approximately a year apart, but they need to be well coordinated between the start of the river bridge and then the start of the Approaches. Mainly because you have to build the river bridge and you get so far, and then they turn over the southbound bridge to the Approach project. But again, this builds all of the and moves all of the traffic around through construction. Again, very large project by state, and occurs in both, and they both provide the multimodal facilities. Again, this has the guideway built in Washington side. The guideway across Hayden Island is in a different program project for the specific guideway across Hayden Island. Next slide. And I think this goes back into some of the similar information again. It's roughly a year of separation between the start of those projects, River Bridge and Approaches. The timeline is something that we're working on to be determined more finite here in the immediate future. And we will also need to go through an evaluation and make sure that we select the right delivery method for that project moving forward. I believe that might be it if we don't have additional similar information about the approach project, what type of work elements that people will find within that. And I think with that might be the end of my update for delivery.
Great. Thank you, Casey. Any questions for Casey on delivery, timing, sequencing, other questions? Looks like Dan Eisenbies from the Port of Portland.
Thank you, Casey. Just a couple follow-up questions about the information in the table. For the highlighted rows that you said are first out of the gate, is that an indication that the program is prioritizing moving forward with those specific contract packages? And then in relation to that, for the non-highlighted rows that are marked as earliest anticipated construction advertisement or RFQ for 2026 in particular, I see that most of those are transit related. However, Marine Drive Package A is not a transit project. So could you speak to the status of those and perhaps why they're not highlighted?
Yeah, let me, thanks, Dan. Let me first say that it's not necessarily listed as a prioritization as opposed to the highlight was really just indicating there's some additional information behind that. But it does also indicate that those are some of the first projects that get to construction. And when those projects start is relative to showing those first. So in general, the program construction starting at the bridge and moving outward from the bridge. So that's kind of the basis of reflecting that. As for the projects that are listed in the 2026 start time, yes, there are a lot of projects listed there that would be the start of primarily those that are listed CMGC and that do fall in the transit, as you noted, are listed as starting that work in 2026 so we can get the work progressing and meet the goal to try to get to a full funding grant agreement, as well as get those projects underway so we can build in sequence in the entire program. It is not representing a deprioritization of that as opposed to saying, hey, there's some additional information about the highlights on that. So, and then kind of when it gets specific to your question about like Marine Drive A, Marine Drive A is an example of a project that is designed to envision that would not designed, but it envisions that it allows transit to get underneath the Marine Drive without building the entire Marine Drive interchange all at once. Not necessarily saying it's only or not a transit project and not a roadway project. It combines a little bit of both in that we have to adjust Marine Drive to get over the top of the future light rail transit alignment. Did I answer your question on that?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Dan, for your question, and Casey too. Any other questions for Casey? Okay, I think we'll move on to public comment. So we have some folks that have signed up for public comment. I'm going to give you some instructions. Those are on the webinar here. So if you've joined by Zoom, click raise hand. And if you've joined by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. The facilitator, me, will call on participants and you will receive an unmute request. Please accept it. If you are commenting by phone, dial *6 to unmute or push *6. Please provide your name and affiliation. And attendees will be allocated up to 2 minutes for public comment, depending on the number of commenters, up to a total of 10 minutes. If we run out of time, you have not had a chance to speak, you can still provide comments after the meeting. Though it appears we only have about 4 people that have signed up, so you all will get a chance to do that. And we have a lineup so far, and I'll just give your names, and we'll have you come in one at a time. I have Gavin Oyen, I hope I've said your name right, Zachary Lauritsen, Mel Sears, and Leah Jackson. So we'll take you in this order. So we'll start with Gavin. So if you've got your hand raised, and we've got a 2-minute timer for you, Gavin. So please provide your comments as soon as you're ready. Oh, well, let's see. Doesn't look like Gavin is here. So I think we're just going by people with their hand raised. So it looks like we've got Leah there. So Leah, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, great. My name is Leah Jackson. I have been a business owner in downtown Vancouver for the last 20 years. I've served on a number of transportation-related committees and commissions for the city of Vancouver, and I was on the first BRT committee representing the downtown. My concern is regarding the lack of direct connection to the library transit hub that's being created. The current one-option access on the Vancouver side to the bridge does not take multimodal users to this hub, but rather drops the user at the waterfront. This out of direction travel and loss of elevation, at least an additional half mile, not counting the length of the spiral ramp on the bridge, is significant for multimodal users traveling to all areas of our city. A direct connection to the Evergreen Boulevard stop is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Next up, we have Zachary Lauritsen.
Good morning. Doing a little mic check. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Right on. Good morning. Well, it's nice to see so many friendly faces. And for those I don't know, I look forward to meeting you. My name is Zachary Lauritsen. I'm the director of Oregon Walks. We're a pedestrian advocacy organization. I also serve on the community advisory group for the IBR program. We've been working with a number of other active transportation, safe streets organizations to really dig in onto the components of this program. So I'm hoping to just highlight a couple this morning. And I know you've got lots of moving parts on this project, and this is just one component. But if we're trying to get people out of single occupancy vehicles, getting this right is really important. So that's why I think we really need to focus on making this world class. So I want to highlight three things, and actually I'll go quick on the first one because Leah actually just hit on it, which is what we're calling the Vancouver dip. So you have to visualize yourself going northbound on the multi-use path. You get to Vancouver, you're 10 stories in the air, and you're forced to go half a mile out of direction down to the waterfront before you can continue your travels north. And so we're really advocating for a connection all the way up to Evergreen Boulevard and the library and the transit connections there. So that's number one, the Vancouver dip. Number two, we really wanted to see the multi-use path and the transit side by side. We think that's best practice because multimodal is just that, multimodal side by side. We're really getting the strong signals. I just want to acknowledge that from Casey and Ray and from Greg and the team that that's not going to be possible. So that second component, and I really want to flag that I appreciate what Lynn brought up and what Councilor Clark brought up about how do we mitigate that out of direction, out of elevation travel for people moving between modes. And so I'm really glad to hear from Casey and from the team that that's high on their list of, and you're hearing those comments. So we really got to figure out how do we make it so that if you're trying to move between modes, you aren't really struggling with distance, like 300 feet between them from one side to the other of the bridge. And then the third thing is, vehicles can take 205 during construction, but if you are a biker or a transit user, you can't divert to 205. It's just too far. And so having access to transit and active transportation during construction, it really needs to be a priority for folks who are transit and active transit dependent. Y'all have a great morning. Take care.
Great. Thank you so much, Zachary and Leah, for your comments. We also have other opportunities for comments. So if you'd like to, if you could put that slide up, submit comments to the ESG after the meeting. You can fill out a comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with ESG Public Comment in the subject line. You may also call 888-503-6735 toll free and state ESG Public Comment in your message, and you can leave a message. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to ESG members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. All comments are posted on the IBR website. So we are going to talk about next steps in closing. So I'm handing that over to Greg Johnson.
Thank you, Anita. Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today with the robust conversation and great questions that we received. We will be digging in further. I think I have one last slide that lists some of the upcoming things that are on the horizon. Once again, this fall, we anticipate the submission of the Navigational Impact Report to the Coast Guard. This fall, we anticipate a cost estimate and financial plan update. That updates the estimate and plan from 2023. In early 2026, the final supplemental environmental impact statement, amended record of decision to follow, and once again, giving that approval for us to begin construction. So the procurement next steps, Casey laid out very well. Columbia River Bridge Progressive Design Build procurement is being worked on as we speak. Finalizing the delivery methods for other contracts, including that large approach contract, is key critical to having this project move ahead in a coordinated way. And once again, the continuing update of project cost and schedule as we get new details. One thing I do want to address, we have a meeting where we are inviting folks who have an interest in the bike, walk, and roll portion of this project. We understand the concerns around how we land in Vancouver. And so we are trying to put together a meeting that will bring those advocacy groups together and individuals who are interested in that portion to have a sit-down conversation about how we can achieve and meet the goals of having a connected bike, walk, and roll facility on both sides of the river. So with that said and done, I will turn it back to you, Anita, for any further questions and next steps.
Great. Thank you, Greg. And also thanks to the ESG members. Before we close, we have a few minutes. Are there any ESG members that have any additional comments or questions before we close our meeting? And I also would like to encourage our ESG members, if you have any specific questions, to follow up with our IBR team. This was a lot of information, and we're here to help provide that information and share. So with that, thank you all for coming today. Those of you tuning in on YouTube too for viewing, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.